a werewolf romance audiobook written by Olivia Smith. Prologue. They say you can tell the exact moment your life ends by the silence that follows. Not death, that comes later, if you're lucky. I'm talking about the moment when everything you thought you were, everything you believed you could become, simply stops mattering. For me, that moment came at 19, in a slave market that smelled like fear and iron, when a monster looked at me and smiled. My name is Elowen Thorne, and this is the story of how I went from prey to predator, from the girl who had nothing to the queen who took everything. But let me take you back to the beginning, to the day I learned that monsters don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes they rule kingdoms, and sometimes, just sometimes, they come to save you wearing a crown. Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching, whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France. I want to know. Don't just sit back, tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Chapter 1. The Market. The chains were heaviest in the morning, not because the iron changed weight with the sun, but because dawn meant the auction would begin, and one of us would be sold before the light faded. We stood in a line of 12, all women, all Omega designation, all young enough to be useful, and old enough to know exactly what that meant. The Bloodstone Market sat at the edge of the Shadowfen territory, a place where laws meant nothing and coin meant everything. I'd been here 3 days, stolen from my village during a raid that left my family's cottage burning and my parents dead in the ashes. The Warlord's men had come at midnight, their wolves tearing through our settlement like a plague. They took only the young, only the females, only those whose screams wouldn't be heard over the flames. I'd fought. Clawed one raider's face so badly he'd lost an eye before his partner knocked me unconscious. When I woke, I was here, chained to 11 other girls who'd stopped crying because tears changed nothing. The market master walked our line, yanking our chains to make us stumble, checking our teeth like we were horses. He paused in front of me, his breath rancid. "This one's got fight," he announced to the gathering crowd. "Fetch a good price for Lord Draven's household." Lord Draven Hollowclaw. Even chained and terrified, I knew that name, knew what it meant to be sold into his service. The crowd parted like water before a ship's prow, and he appeared. Draven Hollowclaw stood 7 feet tall in human form, all brutal muscle and scarred flesh, with eyes that glowed amber even in daylight. His wolf was close to the surface. I could smell the musk of it, the wrongness that came from a beast who'd been twisted by dark magic. He moved down our line slowly, deliberately, savoring our fear like fine wine. When he reached me, he stopped, tilted his head, smiled with too many teeth. "This one," he said, his voice like gravel grinding bone. "How much?" The market master's greed practically radiated off him. 50 gold, my lord. She's strong, young, untouched. 30, Draven interrupted, bored. She's damaged. Look at the bruises. The haggling continued, but I'd stopped listening because I'd felt it. A pull, sudden and violent, like a hook catching in my chest and yanking. My head snapped up, eyes scanning the crowd frantically, searching for the source. And then I saw him. He stood at the market's edge, half hidden by shadow, but I would have felt him in complete darkness. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair that caught the light like raven feathers, and eyes that blazed silver gold in the morning sun. Our gazes met across 50 feet of crowded market, and the world stopped. The mate bond snapped into place with such force that I gasped, stumbling forward against my chains. Every cell in my body recognized him, reached for him, screamed that he was mine and I was his, and nothing else mattered. His eyes widened, shock crossing features that looked carved from stone. Then his expression hardened into something fierce and possessive, and absolutely terrifying. He moved forward through the crowd, wolves and humans alike scrambling out of his path without knowing why, responding to an authority so absolute it needed no announcement. "The auction is closed," the stranger said, his voice carrying across the entire market. I'm purchasing all 12. Chapter 2. The Stranger. Draven's laugh was like breaking glass, sharp, ugly, wrong. The market is open to all buyers, he said, turning to face the stranger with the casual confidence of a man who'd never lost a fight. But I've already claimed this one. First rights, according to Shadowfen law. The stranger's smile was colder than winter frost. Shadowfen law doesn't apply to me, Warlord. I'm invoking royal privilege. The crowd went silent. Royal privilege. Only one wolf could claim that. Draven's face drained of color, his amber eyes widening with the first real fear I'd seen from him. You're not. You can't be. Alaric Nightborne, the stranger confirmed, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Alpha King of the Northern Territories. And these women are now under my protection. I couldn't breathe. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in existence, ruler of all territories, answerable to no one. And he was staring at me like I was the only person in the market. Alaric moved closer, his gaze never leaving mine, and I felt the mate bond pulling tighter with each step. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, a need so profound it bordered on pain. Release them, he commanded, addressing the market master without looking away from me. All of them. Now. The market master fumbled with keys, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice. Draven didn't move, didn't speak, but I could see his wolf rising in his eyes, could smell his rage mixing with fear in a toxic cocktail. When my chains fell away, I stumbled, legs weak from 3 days of standing. Alaric caught me before I hit the ground, his hands gentle despite his obvious strength. The moment his skin touched mine, power flared between us. Silver light that made everyone around us gasp and step back. Mine, he growled, and his wolf was in his voice now, undeniable and absolute. She's mine. The bond, someone in the crowd whispered. He's found his mate. Draven's face twisted with fury. You can't just take her. You paid for nothing, Alaric interrupted, his voice dropping to something deadly. This woman is my fated mate. Under the oldest laws, the laws that supersede even your corrupt excuse for territory governance, she belongs with me. Challenge that, and you challenge me directly. For a long moment, Draven looked like he might actually do it. His wolf was straining against his skin, begging to be released, to fight for pride if not possession. But even corrupted and twisted as he was, some survival instinct remained. Slowly, deliberately, he bowed his head in submission. Of course, Your Majesty. I wouldn't dream of interfering with a mate bond. The lie was obvious, but Alaric simply nodded. He turned to the other 11 women, still chained, still terrified. You're all free, he told them. I have gold for your passage home, or sanctuary in my territory if you have nowhere to go. Then he looked back at me, and the fierceness in his expression softened into something that made my breath catch. Can you walk? He asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good, because we need to leave. Now. He was right. I could feel it, the tension in the crowd, the way Draven's men were positioning themselves at the market's edges, the wrongness that said violence was coming whether we wanted it or not. Alaric guided me toward the market's exit, keeping his body between me and Draven's line of sight. The other women followed, clustering close like frightened birds. We'd almost reached the edge when Draven's voice rang out. You think you can just walk away, Your Majesty? The title dripped with mockery. You think your precious laws matter here, in my territory? Alaric stopped. Slowly, he turned back to face the warlord. Are you challenging me? The question was soft, almost conversational. Draven smiled, and it was the smile of something that had forgotten how to be human. I'm saying that accidents happen. Raids, ambushes, tragic deaths. Even kings aren't immortal. The threat was clear. Alaric's response was to laugh, and the sound was genuinely amused. You're right. Accidents do happen. His eyes flashed pure silver, like the accident that's about to happen to your territory's status. Consider yourself stripped of your lordship, Draven Hollowclaw. By royal decree, effective immediately, Shadowfen falls under direct crown jurisdiction. Draven lunged. One moment he was human, the next his wolf had erupted from his skin. Massive, black-furred, and reeking of corruption. He crashed into Alaric with enough force to shatter stone, and they went down in a tangle of teeth and claws. Chapter 3. The King's Wolf. Alaric's transformation was like watching lightning strike in reverse. Power exploded outward as his human form dissolved into something massive and magnificent. A silver wolf easily twice Draven's size, with eyes that blazed like twin moons, and fangs that gleamed like polished ivory. The two wolves collided with a sound like thunder. Draven's corruption-fueled strength meeting Alaric's ancient power. They tore through the market, scattering vendors and slaves and spectators alike. I should have run. Should have taken the chance to escape while both wolves were distracted. But the mate bond held me frozen, my body refusing to flee, while my mate fought for his life. Because despite his size and power, Alaric was struggling. Draven's corruption made him unpredictable, gave him strength that should have been impossible. Dark magic leaked from his wounds instead of blood, poisoning the air with its stench. The other slaves had scattered, but I remained, watching as Draven's jaws closed around Alaric's throat. The Alpha King thrashed, trying to break free, but the corrupted wolf's grip was iron strong. I felt Alaric's pain through the bond, felt his life force starting to ebb, and something inside me snapped. I'd spent 19 years being powerless, told I was weak because I was Omega, that my only value was in servitude and bearing young, that I would never be strong, never matter, never be anything more than property. They were wrong. Power exploded from my chest like a detonation, radiating outward in waves that made every wolf in the market stagger. It wasn't physical strength. It was something older, deeper, more primal. The Omega gift, they called it. The ability to command, to calm, to speak directly to the wolf inside. Stop! The word came out layered with power, with magic, with the full force of something I'd suppressed my entire life. Every wolf froze. Draven's jaws opened reflexively, releasing Alaric's throat. The Alpha King pulled free, blood streaming from the wound, but alive. I walked forward on shaking legs, my power still radiating from me in visible waves of silver light. Draven's corrupted wolf tried to turn toward me, tried to attack, but his body wouldn't obey. My command held him paralyzed. "You are corruption," I said, and my voice still carried that layered power. "You are poison. You are wrong." I knelt in front of him, close enough to see the madness in his glowing red eyes, the way dark magic writhed beneath his skin like living smoke. And I am the cure. I placed my palm against his massive forehead, and Omega power poured from me into him. Not to heal, he was too far gone for that, but to soothe, to ease, to grant mercy to a wolf who'd been twisted into something monstrous. Draven shuddered once, twice, then slowly began to shrink. The corruption burned away under my touch, dissolving like morning fog. When he finally lay still, he'd shifted back to human form, and for the first time since I'd seen him, his expression was peaceful. Dead, but peaceful. The market was silent. I stood on trembling legs, the last of my power dissipating, and nearly collapsed. Strong arms caught me. Alaric shifted back to human and naked, but apparently unconcerned with modesty, pulled me against his chest. "What did you just do?" he asked, wonder and shock mixing in his voice. "I don't know," I admitted. I couldn't let him kill you." He laughed, the sound shaky with relief and adrenaline. "My fierce mate. My powerful, impossible mate. Then he kissed me, right there in the middle of the market, in front of everyone. And the mate bond sang between us like a symphony, finally acknowledged, finally accepted, finally free. Chapter 4. The Road Home. We left the Shadowfen territory that same day, before Draven's men could organize any kind of response. Alaric had 20 warriors waiting outside the market, wolves who'd been hidden and ready in case the trade negotiation went poorly. They provided clothes, simple traveling gear that felt like luxury after 3 days in chains, and horses for those who couldn't run in wolf form. I'd never shifted, had never even tried, because Omegas in my village were discouraged from attempting it. Unnecessary, they'd said. Dangerous, even, for someone without formal training. Alaric didn't push, just lifted me onto his own horse and swung up behind me, his arms bracketing my body in a way that made me feel safer than I had in weeks. "We have a long ride ahead," he said against my ear. 3 days to the northern capital. Think you can manage?" "I managed 3 days in chains," I pointed out. "I think I can handle a horse." He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest into my back. "Fair point." We rode through the afternoon and into evening, putting as much distance as possible between ourselves and Shadowfen. The other freed slaves traveled with us, still too traumatized to split off on their own. They kept staring at me with a mixture of awe and fear, whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. "She killed him with a touch," one murmured. "Just burned the corruption right out." "She's the Alpha King's mate," another responded. "She's going to be the Luna Queen." Luna Queen. The title felt impossible, like something from a story rather than my actual life. I'd been a village girl yesterday, nobody important, nobody powerful. Now I was supposedly destined to rule beside the most powerful wolf in existence. "You're thinking too loud," Alaric observed. "I can feel your anxiety through the bond." "Can you feel everything I feel?" I asked. "Not everything. Not yet. The bond strengthens over time, especially after it's fully claimed." He paused. "Which brings me to something we need to discuss." I twisted to look at him. "What?" "The mate bond isn't complete until both partners claim each other, until we both choose this freely, with full knowledge of what it means." His expression was serious now, the playfulness gone. "And I won't claim you, Elowen, until you understand exactly what you're accepting." My heart did something complicated in my chest. "Tell me." "It means becoming Luna Queen, sharing my power, my throne, my life. It means being bound to me in a way that can never be broken. Not by distance, not by time, not even by death." His arms tightened around me slightly. "But it also means danger. I have enemies, wolves who resent my authority or want my power. As my mate, you become a target." "I was already a target," I pointed out. "At least as your mate, I'd have a chance to fight back." He smiled at that, fierce and proud. "True, but there's more. The court won't accept you easily. They'll see you as a former slave, an Omega with no training, no bloodline, no right to stand beside me." "So, I'll prove them wrong," I said simply. "I'll learn. I'll train. I'll become what they need me to be." "You'll become what you already are," he corrected. "Strong, fierce, powerful. You don't need to change for them, Elowen. You just need to show them what I already see." The conviction in his voice made something warm bloom in my chest. We rode in comfortable silence after that, the bond humming contentedly between us. As night fell, we made camp in a clearing, setting watches and building fires. The freed slaves clustered together, still seeking safety in numbers. Alaric led me away from the main camp to a smaller fire he'd built just for us. "Privacy," he explained. "We need to talk about what happened in the market." I sat on a fallen log, watching him pace. Even in simple traveling clothes, he radiated authority. "My power," I said. "The Omega gift." "That was more than just Omega influence," he said seriously. "What you did, stopping every wolf in that market, killing Draven's corruption with a touch, That's ancient power, Elowen. Luna Queen power. I don't understand. The first Luna Queens weren't just mates to Alpha Kings. They were witches, healers, wielders of moon magic. That bloodline was supposed to be extinct, wiped out centuries ago. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands. But you carry it. I felt it. Everyone there felt it. My mind reeled. That's impossible. I'm nobody. My parents were farmers. Your parents raised you, he corrected gently. But that doesn't mean they birthed you. Elowen, I think you were hidden, protected, given to a family who could keep you safe until your power manifested. Why? Why hide me? Because wolves with your kind of power are either worshipped or murdered, depending on who finds them first. His grip tightened on my hands. And I'm asking you again, knowing this, do you want the bond? Do you want me? Because if you do, if you claim me as I claim you, there's no going back. We face everything together. Chapter 5. The Claiming. I looked at this man, this king, who'd walked into a slave market and recognized me as his mate within seconds, who'd fought a corrupted warlord to protect me, who was now asking my permission instead of just taking what the bond said was his by right. I've been powerless my whole life, I said slowly, told I was weak, worthless, good for nothing but servitude. But you don't see me that way. I see a woman who stared down a monster and told him no, Alaric said. I see someone who unleashed power strong enough to stop a battle and grant mercy to something that didn't deserve it. I see my equal, my partner, my queen. He brought my hands to his lips. So yes, I see you. And I'm asking, will you have me? The answer rose from somewhere deep inside, from the part of me that had always known I was meant for more than village life and quiet obscurity. Yes, I said. But Alaric? Yes? I'm not going to be some decorative Luna who sits quietly and looks pretty. If I'm your queen, I'm going to change things. Laws about slavery, protections for Omegas, real reform. His smile was brilliant. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Then he kissed me. Not the desperate, relieved kiss from the market, but something slower, deeper, more deliberate. A claiming in truth, not just in word. The mate bond flared between us like wildfire, silver light exploding outward until the entire clearing was illuminated. I felt his power pouring into me, ancient and vast, and I poured mine back into him, completing the circuit. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I felt different, stronger, complete in a way I never had before. Mine, he growled, his eyes flashing pure silver. Yours, I agreed, touching his face gently. As you are mine. We stayed by our private fire for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about the northern capital, about court politics, and regional alphas and the delicate balance that kept peace between territories. I told him about my village, about growing up knowing I was different, about the night of the raid that had brought me to the market. I'm going to find out who ordered that raid, he said, his voice hard with promise. No one attacks innocents in my territories. Not anymore. There will be resistance, I warned. Wolves like Draven, who've built power on suffering. Then we'll tear down their power and build something better. He pulled me closer. Together. The next 2 days passed in a blur of travel and growing anticipation. The closer we got to the northern capital, the more real it became. I was about to enter a world I knew nothing about, claim a position I had no training for, stand beside a king as his equal. The night before we reached the capital, Alaric called me to his tent. There's something you need to know, he said seriously. The court won't accept you quietly. My advisors will push for the Luna trials, a series of challenges designed to prove a new queen's worth. What kind of challenges? Tests of strength, wisdom, and heart. They're dangerous, Elowen. Wolves have died in the trials. I straightened my shoulders. Then I'll pass them. He smiled, fierce and proud. That's my mate. Chapter 6. The Capital. The northern capital sprawled across a mountain valley like a crown of stone and timber. Towers reached toward the sky, banners snapped in the wind, and even from a distance I could sense the power concentrated here. Hundreds of wolves, all strong, all waiting to judge me. Alaric noticed my tension. "Breathe," he said quietly. "You've already survived worse than anything they can throw at you." "They're going to hate me," I said. "Some will," he agreed. "Others will love you. Most will wait to see which way the wind blows before deciding. That's court politics. Everyone's hedging their bets." We rode through the city gates to shocked silence, then rising murmurs as people recognized their king, and recognized that he rode with an unknown woman cradled in his arms, the mate bond visible to any wolf with eyes to see. The palace was carved from the mountain itself, a massive complex of halls and courtyards that seemed to grow organically from the stone. Guards lined our path, their expressions carefully neutral, but I could feel their curiosity, their judgment, their doubt. Alaric brought me to a suite of rooms so luxurious I almost laughed. "This is where you'll stay," he said. "My chambers are through that door, if you need me." "Why separate rooms?" I asked. "Because claiming the bond and consummating it are different things," he said, his voice going rough. "And I won't rush you into something you're not ready for, mate bond or not." Before I could respond, someone knocked. A woman entered, young and pretty with copper hair and an easy smile. "You must be Elowen," she said. "I'm Seraphine Vale, Alaric's cousin, and apparently your new lady-in-waiting." "I don't need a servant," I protested. "Not a servant. A friend." Seraphine grinned. "Someone to teach you court politics, help you dress for formal events, and generally keep you from accidentally starting diplomatic incidents. Trust me, you want me on your side." Despite everything, I found myself smiling back. "Okay, but only if you promise to tell me the truth, not just what you think I want to hear. Deal." She turned to Alaric. "The council wants to meet her. Tonight." His expression hardened. "They can wait." "No," I interrupted. "They can't. The longer we delay, the worse the rumors get. I might as well face them now." Alaric looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. "Fine, but I'm not leaving your side." 3 hours later, bathed and dressed in a gown Seraphine swore was appropriate for court, I walked into the council chambers. 20 wolves sat around a massive table, all of them radiating power and authority. Regional alphas, Seraphine had explained, the ones who governed territories under Alaric's oversight. They all stood when we entered, their eyes tracking my every movement. Alaric led me to the head of the table and kept his hand firmly on my waist. "This is Elowen Thorne," he announced. "My fated mate, your Luna Queen." The silence that followed was deafening. Then an older woman with silver hair stood. "With respect, Your Majesty, we know nothing of this woman. She appeared out of nowhere, with no bloodline, no training, no proof of her claims." "The mate bond is proof," Alaric said, his voice hard. "Or are you questioning the will of the moon goddess?" "Of course not," the woman said smoothly. "But surely you understand our concern. The Luna Queen position carries enormous responsibility. She needs to prove she can handle it." "Through the trials," another alpha added. "Let her face the Luna trials. If she passes, no one will question her right to rule." I felt Alaric tense beside me, felt his wolf rising in his fury. Before he could speak, I stepped forward. "I accept," I said clearly. "Whatever these trials are, I'll face them." "Elowen," Alaric began. "No," I interrupted, meeting his eyes. "This is my choice. I need to prove myself, not just to them, but to me. I need to know I earned this position." He stared at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "The trials begin in 5 days," he announced. "That gives her time to prepare." 3 days, the silver-haired woman countered. 3 days, Alaric agreed through gritted teeth. Chapter 7. Preparation. The next 3 days were the most grueling of my life. Alaric woke me before dawn each morning, bringing me to a private training ground where he taught me how to fight in both human and wolf form. "You need to learn to shift," he said on the second day. "The first trial always involves combat, and you'll be at a severe disadvantage without your wolf." "I've never shifted," I admitted. "Never even tried." "Try now." He demonstrated his body flowing smoothly from human to massive silver wolf and back again. "It's like breathing. Don't force it. Just let it happen." I closed my eyes and reached inward, searching for the wolf that should exist inside me. At first, there was nothing. Then, slowly, I felt her stir. Not a separate being, but a part of myself I'd suppressed so long, I'd forgotten she existed. The shift happened in a heartbeat, my body contorting and reshaping until I stood on 4 legs instead of 2. I looked down at myself, seeing silver-white fur and paws tipped with black claws. "Beautiful," Alaric breathed. "Absolutely perfect." We spent hours running together, him teaching me how to move in wolf form, how to use my enhanced senses, how to fight with teeth and claws. It felt like coming home to a part of myself I'd never known was missing. Seraphine handled the rest of my education: court politics, pack dynamics, the delicate art of diplomacy. "The trials are designed to break you," she explained, "to find your weaknesses and exploit them. You need to be ready for anything." On the 3rd evening, Alaric found me in the library, frantically studying historical texts about previous Luna Queens. "You should rest," he said gently. "The trials start at dawn." "I can't rest. I need to... Elowen." He pulled me out of my chair and into his arms. "You're ready. More than ready. Trust me." I leaned into him, drawing strength from the mate bond. "What if I fail?" "You won't." His certainty was absolute. "But even if you did, even if you walked away tomorrow and never looked back, I'd still choose you. The trials don't determine your worth. They just prove to idiots what I already know, that you're magnificent." I kissed him then, pouring everything I couldn't say into the gesture. When we broke apart, his eyes had gone pure silver. "After the trials," he said roughly, "I'm going to properly claim you. No more separate rooms. No more restraint. Promise?" "Promise." That night, I barely slept. When dawn came, Seraphine helped me dress in fighting leathers, braided my hair back tight, and pressed a small knife into my hand. "Just in case," she said. "The trials are supposed to be controlled, but accidents happen." The ceremonial grounds were packed with wolves, hundreds of them gathered to watch. The entire court, plus common folk who'd heard rumors of the new Luna Queen. Alaric stood with his council at the edge of a raised stone platform. His expression was carefully neutral, but I felt his fear and pride through the bond, warring for dominance. The silver-haired woman from the council stepped onto the platform. "Elowen Thorne," she announced, "you stand before us to prove your worth as Luna Queen. Do you accept the trials freely?" "I do," I said, climbing the steps to stand beside her. "The trials are threefold," she continued. "Strength, wisdom, and heart. Pass all 3, and you take your place as our queen. Fail even one, and you leave in disgrace." She smiled, and it wasn't kind. "The first trial begins now." The platform beneath my feet began to glow with ancient runes. Magic pressed against my skin, old and powerful and utterly foreign. "Your challenge," she said, "is survival." The world twisted, and I was no longer on the platform. Chapter 8: The Trials. I stood in a dense forest, night dark despite being morning moments ago. The air smelled wrong, corrupted, rotten, like something dead left too long in the sun. 3 wolves emerged from the trees, and I knew immediately what they were. Rabid. Corrupted. The same wrongness that had infected Draven now wore 3 new faces, and they were hunting me. I shifted without thinking, letting my wolf surge forward. The first one lunged, and I dodged, using speed over strength. They were bigger, stronger, but the corruption made them clumsy, predictable. I darted in and out, striking at weak points, using their size against them. The fight felt like it lasted hours, but was probably minutes. When the last corrupted wolf fell, I stood over its body, panting and bleeding, but alive. The forest dissolved, and I was back on the platform. Back in human form, covered in wounds that were already starting to heal. The crowd was silent, shock written on every face. "The first trial is complete," the silver-haired woman announced. "The candidate has proven her strength." A healer tended my injuries quickly while I caught my breath. Alaric looked like he wanted to vault onto the platform and grab me, but he held himself back. "The second trial," the woman said, and the runes glowed again. Wisdom. This time I didn't leave the platform. Instead, images appeared in the air around me. Scenarios, problems, impossible choices. "You are queen," the woman intoned. "Your people face these challenges. Choose wisely, or they suffer." The first scenario showed a mother and child, refugees begging for asylum, but accepting them risked war. I thought carefully, remembering everything Seraphine had taught me about diplomacy. Grant temporary sanctuary while negotiating with their home territory. If they have legitimate reason to fear returning, offer permanent protection, and handle the political consequences. Pack law says we protect those who can't protect themselves. More scenarios came, each more complex. Questions of justice, resource distribution, handling wolves who challenged authority. For each one, I drew on my own experiences. Years of being powerless, of seeing what worked and what failed, of understanding the difference between law and justice. Finally, the last scenario appeared. "A warlord has broken pack law," the woman said. "Enslaved innocents. His people demand justice. What do you do?" I thought about Draven, about all the wolves like him who'd built power on suffering. "Strip him of his position," I said. "But don't execute or imprison him. Sentence him to teach, to educate other alphas so this never happens again. His punishment is spending his life preventing the mistakes he made." The image faded. "The second trial is complete," the woman announced, surprise clear in her voice. "The candidate has proven her wisdom. 2 down, 1 to go." But as she announced the third trial, I knew this would be the hardest. "The trial of heart," she said. "This tests not what you can do, but who you are." The runes blazed brighter than before, and the world dissolved. I stood in a small cottage, familiar, my family's cottage, before the raid. My mother sat at the table, face buried in her hands, sobbing. My father stood by the window, staring at nothing, grief carved into every line of his face. "Mom?" My voice came out small. "Dad?" They didn't react, couldn't see me. "They believe you're dead," a voice said behind me. I turned to find an ancient woman, ageless and otherworldly, with eyes that held stars. "Your parents. They've carried that guilt every day since the raid. Who are you?" "I am the voice of the trial. I am here to offer you a choice." She gestured to my parents. "You can return to them. Give up the bond, give up the throne. Go back to being Elowen, the farmer's daughter. Ease their suffering." "But I'd lose Alaric," I said. "Yes. The bond would break. It would hurt, but you'd survive. And your parents would have their daughter back." She paused. "Or you can stay, become queen, gain power and position. But your parents will never know you survived. They'll die thinking you died afraid and alone." It was cruel, perfectly designed to tear me apart. "This isn't a real choice," I said quietly. "It's a false dichotomy." "How so?" "Because you're assuming I have to choose between my parents and Alaric, between my past and my future. But that's not how love works." I straightened my shoulders. "I don't have to give up my parents to be queen. I can send word to them, tell them I'm alive, visit them, use my position to protect them. I can honor both my family and my mate." The woman studied me, then slowly smiled. And if your parents reject you? If they see you as corrupted by power, lost to them? Then I'll keep loving them anyway, I said. And I'll prove through my actions that power doesn't have to corrupt, that you can be queen and daughter, fierce and compassionate, strong and kind. The cottage melted away. The woman's form shimmered, growing taller, more ethereal. You pass, she said. Not because you chose correctly, but because you refused to accept an impossible choice. The trial of heart isn't about sacrifice. It's about having the courage to fight for everything you love. Chapter 9. The Coronation. I stood on the platform again, breathing hard, tears streaming down my face from the emotional weight of what I'd just endured. The crowd was silent, stunned. Then the silver-haired woman knelt. The Luna trials are complete, she announced, her voice ringing across the grounds. Elowen Thorne has proven her strength, her wisdom, and her heart. She is worthy to stand as Luna Queen. The court erupted in cheers and howls. Alaric moved before she finished speaking, leaping onto the platform and catching me in his arms. You did it, he breathed against my hair. Gods, Elowen, you were magnificent. I told you I wouldn't fail, I managed, clinging to him. He pulled back just enough to kiss me, deep and claiming, and full of the passion we'd been restraining. The mate bond sang between us, and I felt his absolute pride, his fierce love, his overwhelming relief. When we finally broke apart, he turned to address the crowd. Tomorrow, he announced, we hold the coronation ceremony. Tomorrow, Elowen officially becomes your Luna Queen. That night, there was no talk of separate rooms. Alaric led me to his chambers, our chambers now, and finally claimed me the way mates were meant to claim each other. The bond completed fully, blazing so bright that wolves throughout the capital later swore they felt it, a pulse of pure silver light that illuminated the night. The coronation itself was a blur of ceremony and spectacle. I wore silver and white, with a crown of moonstone that caught the light. Alaric stood beside me, resplendent in formal robes, his hand never leaving my waist. Do you swear to lead with compassion? The high priest asked. I do, I said clearly. Do you swear to protect the vulnerable? I do. Do you swear to stand as Luna Queen, voice of wisdom and mercy, partner to the Alpha King? I do. The crown settled on my head, and I felt the weight of it, not just physical, but the responsibility it represented. Rise, the priest said. Queen Elowen Silvercrest, Luna of the Northern Territories, may your reign be long and just. The crowd erupted in celebration. Alaric pulled me into his arms and kissed me in front of everyone, claiming me publicly as thoroughly as he'd claimed me privately. As the celebration continued into the night, I found myself on a balcony overlooking the city, needing a moment of quiet. Seraphine found me there. How are you holding up? She asked. Overwhelmed, terrified, excited. I laughed. All of it at once. That's normal. Being queen is... She stopped suddenly, her expression going serious. Elowen, there's something I need to tell you, about your parents. My heart clenched. What about them? Alaric sent wolves to find them, to tell them you were alive. They're here, in the palace. They've been waiting to see you. I couldn't breathe. They're here? Now? In the blue parlor. Alaric wanted to surprise you. I ran. Propriety be damned, I ran through corridors and downstairs until I burst into the blue parlor. My parents stood by the window, older and more worn than I remembered, but alive. Whole. Elowen! My mother's voice broke. Is that really you? Mom, I sobbed, and then I was in her arms, both of us crying, my father wrapping around us both. We thought you were dead, he said hoarsely. We thought we'd lost you forever. I'm here, I managed. I'm alive. I'm home. We stood there for a long time, just holding each other, rebuilding connections that had been severed by violence. Finally, my mother pulled back to look at me. You're a queen, she said wonderingly. Our daughter is a queen. I'm still just Elowen, I said. Still your daughter. That hasn't changed. Everything's changed, my father said, but he was smiling through his tears. You're not the girl we raised. You're someone stronger, fiercer, more incredible than we ever imagined. Because you taught me to be, I said. Everything I am, I learned from you. Alaric appeared in the doorway, giving us privacy but making his presence known. Your Majesties, he said respectfully to my parents. Thank you for coming. I thought Elowen might want— Thank you, my mother interrupted, crossing to him, for saving our daughter, for seeing her worth when others didn't. He smiled. I didn't save her. She saved herself. I just gave her the tools to do it. That night, with my parents safe in guest quarters and Alaric's arms around me, I finally felt complete. Thank you, I whispered, for bringing them here. You shouldn't have to choose between your family and your future, he said. That was never fair. I kissed him, deep and grateful. I love you. I love you too, my fierce queen. Chapter 10. 5 years later. The nursery was filled with afternoon light when I entered, finding Alaric in the rocking chair with our daughter cradled against his chest. She was 3 days old, perfect in every way, with silver eyes like her father and my dark hair. She's beautiful, I said, crossing to them. She's perfect, Alaric corrected, looking up with a smile. Like her mother. I settled into the chair beside him, watching our baby sleep. Through the window, I could see the capital spreading below us, prosperous and growing. 5 years as Luna Queen had transformed everything, not just my life, but the entire kingdom. The slave trade had been abolished within my first month. Omega protections enacted. Laws reformed to protect the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. And through it all, Alaric had stood beside me, supporting every change, fighting every battle. What are you thinking? He asked. About how different my life is from what I expected. About how I thought I'd spend my days farming and raising children in a small village. I took his free hand. About how grateful I am that the universe had different plans. The universe, he said, and a very determined Alpha King who wasn't about to let his mate suffer. Our daughter stirred, making small sounds of protest. I lifted her from Alaric's arms, cradling her close. We should name her, I said. I was thinking Lyra, he suggested. After the constellation, the one that guided me to Shadowfen that day. Lyra Silvercrest. I tested the name. I love it. My parents visited that afternoon, marveling over their granddaughter. They'd moved to the capital permanently, my father serving as an agricultural advisor, my mother helping establish education programs for Omega youth. Watching them with Lyra, seeing the joy on their faces, I felt a deep satisfaction. I'd rebuilt what had been broken, honored both my past and my future. A knock at the door interrupted our family time. Seraphine entered, looking apologetic. Sorry to intrude, but the council is waiting. Something about border tensions with the Eastern Territories. I sighed, handing Lyra to my mother. Duty calls. Always, Alaric agreed, standing. But we face it together. We walked to the council chambers hand in hand, the mate bond humming contentedly between us. 5 years hadn't diminished it. If anything, the bond had grown stronger, deeper, more essential. The council meeting was tense. The Eastern Territories under new leadership were testing our borders, looking for weakness. But I'd learned how to handle territorial disputes, how to balance diplomacy with strength, how to lead with both wisdom and force when necessary. By the time we finished, a solution had been reached, one that protected our people without escalating to war. As we left the chambers, Alaric pulled me into an empty corridor and kissed me thoroughly. Have I mentioned today how incredible you are? He asked. Not in the last hour, I teased. Unacceptable. You're incredible. Magnificent. The best queen this kingdom has ever had. You might be biased. Completely. Doesn't make it less true. We returned to the nursery to find Lyra awake and fussing. my mother rocking her gently. "She knows her parents," she said, smiling. "She was perfectly content until you both left." I took my daughter back, feeling the rightness of her weight in my arms. This small person, this perfect combination of Alaric and me, represented everything we'd built together. "What are you thinking?" Alaric asked, echoing his earlier question. About how I almost accepted that false choice in the trials. How I almost believed I had to give up one part of myself to have another. I looked at him, at our daughter, at my parents, about how grateful I am that I refused to accept that limitation. "You've never been good at accepting limitations," he said fondly. "No, and I never will be." Later that night, after my parents had gone home and Lyra was sleeping peacefully in her crib, Alaric and I stood on our private balcony overlooking the city. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked quietly. "Your old life? The simplicity?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I wouldn't trade this. Wouldn't trade you, or Lyra, or the chance to actually make a difference. I was surviving before. Now I'm living." He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me from behind. "I think about that day in the market sometimes. About how close I came to never finding you. If I'd been delayed even an hour. If I'd chosen a different route. But you didn't," I interrupted. "You came exactly when you needed to. The universe, remember?" "The universe," he agreed. "And a very determined Alpha King." I laughed, turning in his arms to face him. "Thank you," I said seriously. "For seeing me when I was invisible. For fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. For giving me the space to become who I was meant to be." "Thank you," he returned, "for being brave enough to choose this life. For becoming the queen my people needed. For being my mate, my partner, my everything." We kissed under the stars, the mate bond glowing softly between us. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new crises, new battles to fight. But we would face them together, the way we'd faced everything since that day in the market, when our eyes met, and the world changed forever. I'd been a slave. I'd become a queen. But more importantly, I'd become myself, fully, completely, without apology. And that, I thought, was the real triumph. Not the crown, or the power, or the position, but the journey from broken to whole, from powerless to powerful, from invisible to seen. The journey from Elowen Thorne, nobody from nowhere, to Queen Elowen Silvercrest, Luna of the Northern Territories. From the girl who'd been sold like property to the woman who'd changed a kingdom. From mate to mother to monarch. It had been a long road, but standing here with my family, my people, my purpose, I knew it had been worth every step. This was my story, my life, my choice, and I chose all of it. The end. Thank you for joining me on Elowen's journey from slave to queen. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. Until next time, remember, you were never broken. You were just becoming. Olivia Romance Audiobook.